I watched my wife smile at him, like I didn't exist. Not a glance at me, not even a flicker of guilt. And when his hand slid around her waist, she didn't move it away. She leaned into it. That's the moment I realized this wasn't the first time. It was just the first time she thought I'd never find out. It was supposed to be a normal night, one of those boring networking events her company forced her to attend, the kind where everyone pretends to care about each other's job titles while silently judging outfits and salaries. She almost didn't want me to come. That should have been my first warning. "Babe, it's just coworkers," she said earlier that evening, adjusting her dress in the mirror without looking at me. "You'll be bored." I laughed it off back then, told her I didn't mind, told her I wanted to support her. Truth is, I had already started noticing things. The late nights, the sudden gym obsession, the way she started locking her phone, even when we were just sitting together on the couch. Small things, easy to ignore, until they weren't. The venue was loud, dimly lit, filled with fake smiles and overpriced drinks. I stayed near the bar most of the night, watching her from a distance, trying not to look like the insecure husband scanning the room every few seconds. But I kept noticing him. Tall, confident, the kind of guy who didn't just enter a room, he owned it. People gravitated toward him without him even trying. And she was always near him. At first, I told myself it was coincidence. Then I saw her laugh. Not her polite work laugh. Not the one she uses when she's pretending to be interested. No, this one was different. Real. The kind she used to have with me. I was halfway through my drink when I saw it happen. He leaned in, said something I couldn't hear. She placed her hand on his chest. And instead of pulling away, she stayed there, like it belonged there, like she forgot I existed. My stomach dropped. For a second, I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't even breathe properly. It's weird how your brain works in moments like that. You don't immediately jump to anger. You try to explain it away. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm just insecure. But then, he wrapped his arm around her waist, and she leaned into him. That's when something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a switch flipping. I walked toward them slowly, not rushing, not making a scene, just watching, observing, counting every second she didn't pull away from him. Every second she didn't look around to see if I was watching. Every second she chose him over the fact that her husband was in the same room. When I finally reached them, neither of them noticed me at first. That's how close they were. That's how comfortable they were. "Hey!" My voice cut through their little moment like a knife. She froze instantly. His hand dropped from her waist. And for the first time that night, she looked at me, really looked at me, her face drained of color. "What are you doing here?" she asked, like I was the one who didn't belong. Not "Hey babe," not "Oh, you found me." No, that question, that stupid question. The guy next to her straightened up, suddenly aware of the situation. You must be her husband." I finished for him, calm, too calm. I extended my hand. He hesitated for half a second, then shook it, firm grip, confident, like he didn't feel guilty at all, like this wasn't the first time he'd been in this exact situation. "Nice to meet you," he said, and here's the part that really got to me. He smiled, not nervously, not awkwardly, just smiled, like I was some random guy being introduced at a party. I looked at her. She couldn't even meet my eyes anymore. Her body had shifted slightly away from him now, like she was trying to rewrite the last few minutes. Too late, way too late. "Enjoying the party?" I asked her. Simple question, but my tone made it clear. This wasn't small talk. She swallowed. "Yeah, it's fine, fine." That's the word she chose. After everything I just saw, I nodded slowly, then looked back at him. "So, how long?" Silence. Immediate. Heavy. The kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Her head snapped toward me. "What are you talking about?" There it was. The denial. Right on schedule. I let out a quiet laugh. Not amused. Not angry. Just empty. "Don't do that," I said softly. "Don't insult me like that." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Because she knew. She knew I knew. The guy shifted slightly, clearly uncomfortable now. "Look, man, I think there's a misunderstanding." I raised a hand, cutting him off. "No, there isn't." And for the first time, my voice carried weight. The kind that makes people stop talking. The kind that makes people listen. I stepped closer. Not aggressive. Not threatening. Just close enough. Close enough for both of them to feel it. I just have one question, I said, looking directly at her. Not him. Her. Because this wasn't about him. Not really. It was about the woman who stood next to me for years, and somehow became a stranger right in front of me. My voice dropped lower, calmer, colder. Did you really think? I paused. Let it sink in. Let the tension stretch. I wouldn't find out? Her eyes widened slightly, and in that exact moment, I saw something I hadn't seen all night. Not guilt, not fear, panic. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just a one-time thing. There was something bigger, something deeper, something she was desperately trying to hide. And I had just scratched the surface. I didn't confront her that night. That's the part that still messes with people when I tell them this. They expect me to burst into the room, scream, throw punches, drag the guy out by his collar. That's what most people think they do. Hell, that's what I thought I'd do. But when you actually stand there, watching your entire reality collapse in front of you, your brain doesn't go into rage. It goes quiet, cold, calculated. I stepped back from the door before it could creak. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to echo down the hallway. I forced myself to breathe slowly, quietly, like I was the one hiding something. Because suddenly, I realized something that made my stomach twist even worse than what I'd just seen. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't worried. She wasn't even careful, which meant this wasn't the first time. And that thought changed everything. I walked out of the house like I had just stopped by and forgot something. Calm, silent, controlled. My hands were shaking, but I kept them in my pockets. I got in my car, sat there, didn't start the engine. I just stared at the steering wheel, replaying the last year of my life like it was some kind of sick movie I hadn't realized I was in. Every late night she had, every work emergency, every time she got distant and blamed it on stress, every time I apologized for asking too many questions. God, I actually apologized to her. I let out a quiet laugh, but there was nothing funny about it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. But I needed to be sure, because something about that guy felt off. Not just the fact that he was in my house, in my bed, with my wife. There was something else. Something I couldn't place yet. So instead of driving away, I pulled out my phone, and I checked our home security app. We had cameras outside the house. I installed them myself a year ago after a break-in happened down the street. I opened the footage from earlier that evening. And that's when everything got worse, because I saw him arrive, and he didn't come alone. My stomach dropped as I zoomed in on the footage. A second car had pulled up behind his, and out of that car came someone I recognized instantly, someone who made my blood run cold. It was my brother. I stared at the screen, hoping I was wrong, hoping the angle was messing with me. But no, it was him. Same walk, same jacket he always wore. Same stupid habit of checking his phone every few seconds like the world revolved around him. And then I saw something that made my hands go numb. He didn't go inside. He just stood there, watching, like he was waiting, like he already knew what was happening inside my house. I rewound the footage 3 times. Same thing every time. He dropped the other guy off, said something through the window, laughed, and then stayed outside for a few minutes before finally leaving. Like this was normal. Like this was routine. Like he had done this before. I felt something inside me crack. Because betrayal from your wife is one thing, but betrayal from your own blood? That hits different. That rewrites your entire life. Suddenly, every family dinner felt fake. Every joke, every memory, every moment I thought meant something. It all felt staged. Like I was the only one who didn't know the truth. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. And then I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet, because they thought I was stupid. They thought I was blind. They thought they were getting away with it. So I was going to let them keep thinking that. I drove home again, but this time, I parked a little further down the street. I waited, 10 minutes, 15, 20, and then I saw him. The guy. He walked out of my house like he owned it, like he belonged there. He adjusted his jacket, checked his phone, and walked to his car without a care in the world. No guilt. No hesitation. Nothing. And just before he got in, he smiled. That smug, satisfied smile of someone who thinks they've won. I felt my jaw tighten, but I stayed still, because I wasn't done yet. A few minutes later, my wife stepped outside. She stood on the porch, arms crossed, looking around like she was making sure no one saw him leave. And then she did something that made my chest feel hollow. She pulled out her phone and called someone. I already knew who, but I needed to hear it. So I opened the audio from the outdoor camera, and I listened. Her voice was soft, almost affectionate. "Yeah, he just left," she said. Pause. A small laugh. "No, he has no idea." Another pause. And then, "Yeah, I know it's getting risky, but he's too trusting. He won't figure it out." I felt my grip on reality slip a little. Too trusting. That's what I was to her. Not a husband, not a partner, just someone easy to fool. And then she said the one thing that changed everything. "Don't worry, I'll handle it soon." Handle it. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just cheating. This was something bigger, something planned, something dangerous. And for the first time that night, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was scared, because I had no idea what she meant by handle it. But I had a feeling I was the one she was talking about. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I sat in my car, parked far enough down the street so she wouldn't notice, staring at my house like it didn't belong to me anymore, like I was watching someone else's life unfold inside it. Because that's exactly what it felt like. I kept replaying her words in my head. "He has no idea. He's too trusting. I'll handle it soon." That last line, it wouldn't leave me alone. At first, I thought it was just about divorce. Maybe she was planning to leave me. Maybe she was waiting for the right time. But deep down, it didn't feel that simple. There was something cold about the way she said it. Something final. And the fact that my brother was involved, that made it worse. Because now it wasn't just betrayal. It was coordination. Planning. I needed more than guesses. I needed proof. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I broke into my own house. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, carefully, like I was the intruder now. I used the spare key I kept hidden in the garage, slipped inside, and listened. Silence. She was upstairs, probably asleep, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just destroyed everything. I moved slowly through the house, every step deliberate. I knew exactly where everything was, but it still felt unfamiliar. Wrong. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, unlocked, careless, or maybe confident, like she believed I'd never look, that I'd never question her, that I'd stay exactly what she called me, too trusting. My hands hesitated for a second, because once I looked, there was no going back. But then I remembered her voice, and I picked it up. The messages weren't even hidden. No secret apps, no fake names, just there, right in front of me. A group chat, 3 people, her, my brother, and the guy. I opened it, and everything inside me went numb, because this wasn't just an affair. This was a plan, a long one, months of messages, details, steps, conversations about me, like I wasn't even human, like I was just a problem to solve. First, it was small, jokes about me working late, about how easy it was to keep me distracted. Then it got worse, discussions about money, my money, our accounts, my investments, and then I saw the message that made my stomach drop. Once it's done, everything transfers clean. I stared at the screen, trying to understand, trying to make sense of what I was reading. And then I saw the reply. Good. He won't see it coming. I felt something inside me snap, because now it wasn't just emotional. It wasn't just betrayal. They were planning to take everything, everything I had built, everything I trusted them with. And then I saw the final part of the plan, the part that made my hands start shaking. Accident would be easiest. 3 words. That's all it said. But it was enough. Enough to understand everything. Enough to realize I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being set up. My wife, my own brother, and that man, they weren't just betraying me. They were planning to erase me. And suddenly, everything clicked. Her distance, her coldness, the way she stopped arguing with me, stopped caring. She wasn't trying to fix anything. She was waiting for the moment where I wouldn't be a problem anymore. I put the phone down slowly. My hands were steady now, not shaking, not panicked, just calm, because fear had turned into something else. something colder. They thought I was stupid. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I'd go quietly. But they forgot one thing. I built everything we had. I knew every account, every document, every move. So I made one decision. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to disappear. On my terms. That night, I transferred everything. Every account. Every asset. Everything that had my name on it. Gone. Moved. Untouchable. By morning, there was nothing left for them to take. But I didn't stop there. Because they didn't just try to ruin my life. They tried to end it. So I left something behind. Something they would find. Something that would make them panic. A message. Short. Simple. Clear. I know. That's it. No explanation. No details. Just enough to let them realize their plan had failed. And then I left.
No goodbye. No confrontation. No closure.
I drove away from that house, from that life, from everything I thought was real. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Not broken. Not lost. Just done. I didn't look back. But I heard what happened after. Because things like that don't stay quiet. They fell apart. Fast. The money was gone. The plan collapsed. Trust between them shattered. Because if they could do that to me, they could do it to each other. My brother tried to contact me. Dozens of times. Ignored. My wife, she showed up at my office weeks later. Crying. Begging. Saying it wasn't what it looked like. Saying she made a mistake. I didn't even stop walking. Because some lines, once crossed, don't exist anymore. And as for the guy, last I heard, he disappeared too. Took what he could. Left them both behind. Funny how that works. In the end, they destroyed each other. And I didn't have to do anything. That's the part people don't expect.
No revenge. No shouting. No dramatic ending.
Just silence. And consequences. Because sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the only way to win. And if you've ever trusted someone so much that you ignored the signs right in front of you, then you already know. The scariest betrayals aren't the ones you see coming. They're the ones planned behind your back, by the people you would have never suspected. I thought it was over. That's the biggest mistake I made. For the first few days after I left, everything felt quiet. Not peaceful, not exactly safe. Just quiet in a way that made it easy to believe I had actually escaped. No calls I answered. No messages I read. No looking back. I stayed in a temporary apartment across the city, paid in cash, under a name that wasn't mine. It wasn't paranoia. Not after what I had seen. Not after those messages. Accident would be easiest. People don't come back from sentences like that. So I disappeared. Changed routines. Avoided familiar places. Even stopped using my main accounts. If they wanted to find me, they'd have to work for it. And for a while, felt like they couldn't. But on the fourth day, something changed. Started small. Too small for most people to notice. But I wasn't most people anymore. I was watching everything. I went to withdraw cash from a nearby ATM. Nothing unusual. Just enough to get through the next few days without touching anything traceable. But when I checked my balance, my chest tightened. Not because the money was gone. Because it wasn't. Everything was still there. Exactly where I left it. That didn't make sense. They had access. They had a plan. They had already started moving things before I even found out. So why hadn't they touched it yet? Why hadn't they tried to take anything? At first, I thought maybe they were panicking. Maybe my message, I know, threw them off. Maybe they were trying to figure out how much I knew before making a move. That would make sense. But something about it still felt wrong. Too quiet. Too controlled. Then I noticed something else. When I left the ATM, I saw the same car I had noticed earlier that morning. Dark gray, parked across the street. Engine off. Windows tinted. It wasn't doing anything. Just sitting there. I told myself it was nothing. Coincidence. But as I walked down the street, I felt it. That feeling. The kind that creeps up on you slowly, wrapping around your chest before your brain even catches up. I wasn't alone. I didn't look back. That's rule one. If someone is watching you, the worst thing you can do is confirm you've noticed. So I kept walking. Same pace. Same direction. But my mind was racing. I turned the corner, stepped into a small convenience store, and casually walked to the back aisle. Then I waited. 10 seconds. 15. 20. And then the door opened. I didn't need to turn around. I could feel it. The shift in the air. The presence. Someone had followed me inside. I grabbed a random bottle off the shelf and pretended to read the label, using the reflection on the glass door behind me. And that's when I saw him. Not the same guy from before. Not the one from my house. This one was different. Mid-30s. Clean cut. Calm. Too calm. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't browsing. He walked in and stopped, like he was waiting. My grip tightened slightly on the bottle, because now it wasn't a feeling anymore. It was real. I walked to the counter, paid for the drink, and stepped outside without looking in his direction. Then I crossed the street, turned left, then right, then another left, changing direction just enough to test it. And he followed. Not close, not obvious, but consistent. My heartbeat picked up again, because now one thing was clear. They hadn't stopped. They hadn't panicked. They had adapted. And then the worst thought hit me. What if they expected me to run? What if this was part of their plan? I picked up my pace slightly, blending into a busier street, using the crowd as cover. More people, more movement, harder to track. At least that's what I hoped. I ducked into another building, cut through the lobby, and exited through the back. When I looked around, he was gone. For a moment, I felt relief, like maybe I had lost him, like maybe I was still in control. But then my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. No name, no caller ID, just a message. I opened it, and my stomach dropped instantly. "We know where you are." 3 seconds later, another message. "You shouldn't have run." My hands went cold, because this wasn't panic anymore. This wasn't confusion. This was confirmation. They weren't guessing. They weren't searching. They were watching. And then the third message came in, the one that made everything worse. "You missed something." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. What did I miss? I took the money. I left. I erased everything I could. What could they possibly still have? And then it hit me, something I hadn't even thought about, something I assumed didn't matter, something small, something I left behind, something that could destroy everything. Because if they still had that, then I didn't just run from them. I ran straight into their next move. "You missed something." That message didn't leave my head. Not while I walked. Not while I tried to think. Not even when I forced myself to sit down at a random cafe just to look normal. I kept replaying everything. Every step. Every move. Every decision I made the night I left. I took the money. I backed up the evidence. I wiped my tracks. I left a message. I know. So what did I miss? What could they possibly still have that gave them this kind of confidence? I forced myself to slow down. Panicking wouldn't help. They wanted me confused. They wanted me reacting. That's how people make mistakes. And I had already made one. I just didn't know what it was yet. I pulled out my phone again and opened the message thread. No number.
No trace.
Just those 3 lines sitting there like they were waiting for me to understand. "We know where you are. You shouldn't have run. You missed something." If they really knew where I was, why weren't they acting? Why send messages? Why warn me? Unless they didn't want to catch me yet. That thought made my chest tighten, because it meant one thing. They were playing with me. I leaned back in my chair and looked around the cafe casually. People talking, laughing, scrolling their phones. Normal life. Meanwhile, I was sitting there trying to figure out how close I was to being erased from it. Think. Go back. Start from the beginning. The house. The cameras, the messages, the transfers, the note I left. I know. And then it hit me, not all at once, slow, like something crawling up the back of my mind. The cameras. I sat up slightly, my heart starting to race again. I had installed those cameras. I had access. But so did she. My stomach dropped. Of course she did. We both had the app. We both had login access. We both had control, which meant everything I watched, everything I downloaded, everything I saw that night, she could see too. I felt a cold wave move through my body, because that meant one thing. She knew I knew. Not from the message, not from guessing, from the moment I opened that footage. I ran a hand over my face trying to process it. That's why they weren't panicking. That's why the money was still there. That's why everything felt controlled. Because they had already adjusted, before I even left. They weren't reacting to me. They were ahead of me. And then something else clicked. Something worse. If they saw me access the footage, then they saw me watch everything. The guy, the house, the messages. Which means they also knew what I took, what I saved, what I moved. Unless my thoughts stopped mid-sentence, because a new idea just hit me. What if I didn't see everything? I felt my pulse spike again. What if the footage I saw was only what they wanted me to see? That thought changed everything. I immediately opened the camera app again. My hands moved faster now, more urgent, more focused. I went back to the footage from that night, scrolled through the timeline, rewatched the same clips, the same angles, the same moments. But this time, I wasn't looking at what was happening. I was looking at what wasn't. And that's when I saw it. A gap, small, barely noticeable, just a few minutes missing between clips. First, it looked normal, like a delay, like a glitch, but it wasn't, because I knew how that system worked. I installed it myself. It didn't skip like that. It didn't miss motion. It didn't just lose time, unless someone edited it. My breathing got heavier, because now it made sense. They didn't just plan against me. They planned for me. They knew I'd eventually get suspicious. They knew I'd check the cameras. They knew I'd follow the trail. So they gave me one, a version of the truth. Just enough to make me react. Just enough to push me into making the moves they wanted. And I walked right into it. The money transfer, the disappearance, the message, everything I did was expected. I wasn't escaping. I was following a script. And that realization hit harder than anything else. Because it meant one thing. I wasn't ahead. I never was. I stood up immediately, left cash on the table, walked out without finishing my drink. Because now I knew. The real plan didn't start at the house. It didn't start with the cheating. It didn't even start with the money. It started with me, and whatever I missed, whatever they were talking about, was still out there. And now they were making sure I found it. Because if they wanted me scared, that meant one thing. I was getting closer to something they couldn't control. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. A new message. You're finally figuring it out. I stopped walking and read the next line. Check your email. My chest tightened because I already knew whatever was waiting there was going to be worse than everything I had seen so far. And for the first time since all of this started, I hesitated because once I opened that, there was no going back. I didn't open the email right away. I just stood there on the sidewalk, phone in my hand, staring at the notification like it was something alive, something waiting for me to make the wrong move. Because at this point, that's exactly what it felt like. Every step I had taken so far, every smart decision, every attempt to stay ahead had already been predicted, controlled, used. So opening that email, it didn't feel like gaining information. It felt like walking into another trap. But I didn't have a choice anymore. If they were sending it to me, it meant I was supposed to see it, which also meant whatever was inside was important enough that they were confident it wouldn't help me. That thought alone made my chest tighten. I took a slow breath, stepped away from the main road, and leaned against a wall where I could see people coming and going. Old instinct. Stay aware. Stay in control of your surroundings at least as much as possible. Then I opened it. There was no subject line, no sender name, just a single attachment. A video file. For a second, I didn't move. My thumb hovered over the screen, hesitation creeping in again. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. The kind of instinct that tells you something is wrong before your brain can explain why. But I tapped it anyway. The video started immediately. Grainy quality, slightly angled, like it was recorded from a hidden camera. And the moment I saw the room, my stomach dropped. It was my house, not the living room, not the hallway, the bedroom. I felt my pulse spike as the footage continued. The timestamp showed it was from weeks ago, late at night. And then I walked into frame. For a moment, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Because I wasn't just in the video. I was different. My posture was off. My movements slower, heavier, like I was tired or distracted or not fully present. I watched as I sat down on the edge of the bed, rubbing my face like I was stressed about something. Then Emily walked in. She looked normal, calm, almost gentle. Not the version of her I had seen in the messages. Not the version plotting behind my back. This version looked like the wife I thought I had. She said something, but there was no audio, just her lips moving. and me responding. At first, it looked like a normal conversation, until it didn't, because suddenly, my body language changed. Completely. I stood up too fast. My shoulders tensed. My hands clenched. Even without sound, I could tell something was wrong. Emily took a step back, and that's when I saw it. Fear. Real fear. She raised her hands slightly, like she was trying to calm me down. But I didn't calm down. I stepped closer. Aggressive. Unstable. Nothing like myself. I felt a cold chill run through me as I watched, because I had no memory of this. None. The video continued, and it got worse. I grabbed something off the nightstand and threw it. Hard. It shattered against the wall just inches from her. She flinched. Actually flinched. Then I started shouting. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I could see it in my face. Anger. Confusion. Something off. Emily backed up further, almost to the door. And for a second, I thought, this is it. This is where everything makes sense. This is why she was scared. This is why she started pulling away. But then the video shifted again. And everything I thought I understood fell apart. Because right after that moment, right after I looked completely out of control, Emily did something I wasn't expecting. She stopped acting scared. It was subtle at first. Just a small change in her posture. A slight lowering of her hands. But then, she smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a relieved one. Controlled one. And my stomach dropped. Because that didn't match the situation at all. Then she said something. Slowly. Clearly. Like she wanted me to hear it. And whatever she said, it worked. Because I froze. Completely. Like someone had just flipped a switch. The anger disappeared from my face. The tension in my body dropped. And I just stood there. Still. Silent. Then I sat back down. Like nothing had happened. Like the last 30 seconds didn't exist. The video ended. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to catch up. Because what I had just seen didn't make sense. Not in any normal way. That wasn't just an argument. That wasn't just stress or anger. That was something else. Something controlled. Something triggered. And the worst part? I had no memory of it. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. Now you understand. My hands tightened around the phone. Because no, I didn't understand. Not fully. But I was getting closer. And then the next message came in. You were never the problem. I frowned. That didn't make sense. Everything I had just seen pointed to the opposite. But before I could even process it, another message appeared. She made you into one. I felt my chest tighten. Because suddenly, everything shifted again. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just a plan for money. This was something much deeper. Something far more dangerous. And if what they were saying was true, then the version of me in that video wasn't an accident. It was created. I didn't move for a long time after that video ended. People walked past me on the sidewalk. Cars kept moving. Life continued like nothing had changed. But inside my head, everything had shifted. The story I thought I was living didn't make sense anymore. If that video was real, then I wasn't just being betrayed. I had been used, controlled, and worst of all, I didn't even know when it started. I replayed the video again, this time focusing on every small detail instead of the obvious parts. The room, the lighting, the way I moved, the way she spoke. And then I noticed something I had missed the first time. Right before I changed, right before my behavior flipped, Emily said something very specific. Her lips moved slowly, clearly, like she wanted those exact words to land. I paused the video and zoomed in. Took a few seconds, but I could read it. 3 words. Calm down, Daniel. My name. But it wasn't the words themselves that made my chest tighten. It was the timing. Because the moment she said it, I changed. Not gradually. Instantly. Like a switch being flipped. That wasn't normal. That wasn't emotion. That was a trigger. I felt a cold wave run through me as I stepped away from the wall and started walking again. This time with only one destination in mind. The house. I didn't care if it was risky anymore. I didn't care if they were watching. Because if what I just saw was real, then everything I thought I knew about my own mind was wrong. And I needed answers. Now, I didn't take the main road. I cut through side streets, changed direction twice, and made sure no one stayed behind me too long. Whether it mattered or not, I couldn't tell anymore. But instinct was the only thing I trusted at this point. By the time I reached the neighborhood, The sun had already started to go down. The house looked the same, calm, normal, like nothing inside it had ever been wrong. But now I knew better. I didn't go through the front. I went around the back, keeping low, staying out of direct sight. Old habits, things you pick up without realizing. The back door was locked, but I still had the spare, the same one I used before. For a second, I hesitated, because walking back into that house didn't feel like returning home anymore. It felt like stepping back into a place that had been quietly controlling me for months, maybe longer. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Silence, complete silence. The air felt different, heavy, like something had been sitting there waiting. I moved slowly through the kitchen, scanning everything. Nothing looked out of place. No signs of panic.
No rushed movements. No mess.
Which meant one thing. They weren't here. Or they didn't expect me to come back. I went straight upstairs. The bedroom door was slightly open, just like it had been that night. For a moment, my body tensed. That same memory flashing through my mind again. The video, the way I looked, the way I changed. I pushed the door open. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The bed was made. The nightstand was clean. No broken pieces. No signs of the object I had thrown in the video, which meant someone had cleaned it. Carefully, deliberately. I stepped inside and looked around more closely this time. Not like before. Not looking for obvious things. Looking for patterns. For anything that didn't belong. And then I saw it. Not on the bed. Not on the table. On the wall. A small black dot. Barely noticeable unless you were looking directly at it. My stomach dropped. I stepped closer, raised my hand slowly, and touched it. It wasn't part of the wall. It was placed there. A camera. My breathing slowed. Not panicked. Not rushed. Just focused. Because now everything was starting to line up. I scanned the room again, more carefully, and within seconds, I found another one, near the ceiling, angled perfectly. Then another, hidden inside the smoke detector. 3 cameras. In the bedroom alone. I stepped back slowly, my mind racing, because this wasn't just surveillance. This was observation, detailed, constant, planned. They weren't just watching me to catch something. They were studying me, tracking behavior, reactions, patterns, testing. And that video was just one result. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything. Angles, positions, every single camera I could find. Because now this wasn't about guessing anymore. This was proof. And then I noticed something else. Something worse. Near the edge of the bed, partially hidden under the frame, a small device. I crouched down slowly and pulled it out. It wasn't a camera. It was something else. A small black box.
No lights. No labels.
Just a single button on the side. I stared at it for a long second, because I already had a feeling what it was. But I needed to be sure, so I pressed the button. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a faint sound. Not loud, not sharp, just subtle, like a tone, barely audible. But the moment I heard it, something inside my chest tightened. And for a split second, just a split second, everything around me felt off, like my focus slipped, like my thoughts didn't fully connect. Then it was gone. I dropped the device immediately, my breathing heavier now, not from fear, from realization. That wasn't just a random piece of equipment. That was something meant for me, something designed to affect me. And suddenly, that video made perfect sense. The way I changed, the way I snapped, the way I calmed down instantly when she spoke. This wasn't natural. It was controlled. My phone buzzed again. Same number. A new message. Now you see it. I stared at the screen, my grip tightening. Because yeah, I saw it. But that only raised a bigger question. Why? Why go through all of this? Why manipulate me? Why control me? Why build something this complex? Just to take money? No, this wasn't about money. Not anymore. And then the next message came in. The one that made everything worse. We needed you to become unstable. I felt my chest go cold. Because that meant one thing. Everything I thought was breaking inside me wasn't real. It was made. And if they succeeded, then whatever came next was already planned. I stood there in that room for a long time, staring at the small black device on the floor like it was something alive. The silence around me felt heavier now, like the house itself had been holding secrets for months and I had only just started to hear them. We needed you to become unstable. That message kept repeating in my head. Not you became unstable. Not you had issues. They needed it, which meant everything I had been experiencing. Every gap, every moment that felt slightly off, every argument that escalated too quickly. It wasn't random. It was designed. I picked the device back up slowly, this time more careful, more aware. My fingers hovered over it, but I didn't press the button again. I didn't need to. I had already felt enough. That slight shift in focus. That moment where everything blurred for just a fraction of a second. That wasn't normal. That was control. I moved to the edge of the bed and sat down, trying to piece everything together from the beginning. The late nights, the growing distance, the sudden changes in my behavior, the arguments I barely remembered, the way she would sometimes just look at me like she was studying something instead of feeling something. Back then, I thought she was losing interest. Now I realized she was observing results. My jaw tightened as I thought about the video again. The way I snapped, the way I threw something, the way I lost control, and then the way I calmed down instantly when she spoke. Calm down, Daniel. That wasn't just a phrase. That was a command. I stood up again and started searching the room more thoroughly, this time not just for cameras, but for anything that could be connected to this. Anything that could explain how deep this went. I checked behind furniture, inside drawers, under the mattress. Nothing obvious. Everything was clean. Too clean. Which meant whatever they were using, they didn't leave it all in one place. They spread it out. Hidden. Integrated into my daily life. And then another thought hit me. Not all of it had to be physical. My phone. I pulled it out immediately and stared at it for a second. How many times had I used this without thinking? How many times had I assumed it was just mine? I opened the settings, started scrolling, looking for anything unusual. First, everything looked normal. Apps, permissions, notifications. Nothing stood out until I reached something I had never paid attention to before. Background processes. There was an app running that I didn't recognize.
No icon.
No name, just a blank space. My chest tightened again, because I knew what that meant. I tapped it. Nothing opened.
No interfase.
No options, which meant it wasn't meant to be seen. I tried to uninstall it. It didn't respond. That's when it hit me. They weren't just watching me through cameras. They were inside my phone, inside everything I used daily. Tracking, monitoring, maybe even triggering. My mind started racing faster now, because this wasn't just about observing behavior anymore. This was control at a deeper level. I thought back to the moments where things felt off. Times when I suddenly felt irritated without reason. Moments where I couldn't focus, where my thoughts didn't fully connect. What if those weren't natural? What if those were influenced? I ran a hand through my hair, pacing the room now, because this was bigger than I thought. Way bigger. And then something else clicked. Something that made everything feel even worse. They didn't just pick me randomly. They chose me, carefully, because I was easy to access, easy to monitor, easy to control. A stable job, predictable routine, trusting nature. Everything about me made this easier for them. And then I remembered something from the messages. Something I had almost overlooked. Once it's done. That word meant there was an end goal, a final stage. And if they needed me to become unstable, then that instability was part of something bigger. Something they hadn't reached yet. I stopped pacing, because another thought just hit me. What if I wasn't the only one? What if this wasn't just about me? That possibility made my chest tighten even more. Because if this was part of something larger, then walking away wasn't enough. They wouldn't stop. They couldn't. Picked up my phone again, opened the messages, stared at the last one. We needed you to become unstable. I typed back, for the first time. Why me? I stared at the screen, waiting. Seconds passed. Then the typing indicator appeared, and stopped. Then appeared again, like they were choosing their words carefully. Finally, the reply came in. Because you wouldn't remember. I felt my entire body go still. Wouldn't remember. That explained everything. The gaps, the missing moments, the lack of memory after those episodes. They weren't just controlling me. They were erasing the evidence inside my own mind. And that made this even more dangerous. Because if I couldn't remember what I did, then I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't prove anything. I couldn't even trust my own actions. My phone buzzed again. Another message. You were perfect. That word, perfect, made my stomach twist, because to them, this wasn't personal. This was a project, and I was the result. I looked around the room one more time, at the cameras, at the device, at the space that used to feel like my home, and I realized something. I wasn't just running anymore. I was part of something I didn't understand yet, and if I didn't figure it out soon, they would finish whatever they started. With me, or without me. I didn't reply to that last message. Because you wouldn't remember. You were perfect. Those words sat in my head like something heavy. Something I couldn't shake no matter how much I tried to think around it. Every instinct in me was telling me to stop reacting, to stop playing along, to stop giving them exactly what they wanted. Because that's what this had been from the start. Not just a plan, a controlled reaction. Every move I made, they expected it. Every question I asked, they were ready for it. So this time, I didn't respond. I changed approach. I stepped out of the bedroom and moved through the house again. Slower this time, more methodical. Before, I was looking for obvious things, cameras, devices, anything out of place. Now I was thinking differently. If they needed me unstable, if they needed me unpredictable, then there had to be a reason beyond money. Because money didn't require this level of control. Money didn't require months of behavioral manipulation. Money didn't require turning someone into something they couldn't recognize. I walked into the living room and stopped. Something about it felt off. Not visually, not immediately obvious, just wrong. I stood still for a moment, scanning everything again. Couch, table, TV, shelves, everything exactly where it should be. But then I noticed it. The shelf, not the objects on it. The dust. There was a slight gap. A clean line where something had been removed recently. Something small, rectangular. I stepped closer and ran my fingers across it. Yeah, definitely something missing. My mind started connecting things again. Not random anymore, structured. I went back to the bedroom, grabbed the small black device from the floor, and brought it into the living room. Then I stood in front of that empty space again, measured it with my eyes. The size matched, which meant there had been something here before. Something they took, or moved, or were using. I looked around again, more focused now. If something was missing, maybe something else replaced it. And that's when I saw it. The TV, not the screen, the reflection. There was a slight angle distortion, barely noticeable, but enough. I stepped closer and reached behind it. My fingers brushed against something. Another device, larger than the one in the bedroom, more complex. I pulled it out slowly. And this time, there was no doubt. This wasn't just some simple trigger device. This was connected, wired, active. I turned it over in my hand.
No branding, no labels.
But there was a slot, and inside it, a memory card. My pulse picked up again, because now things were starting to look very different. This wasn't just about controlling me. This was about recording me. I removed the card carefully and stared at it for a second. Then I put it into my phone. Took a moment to load. Then a folder appeared. Dozens of files, all labeled with dates. My chest tightened as I opened the first one. Video. Same grainy quality. Same hidden angle. But this time, it wasn't just one moment. It was everything. Days, weeks, moments I didn't remember. Moments I thought were normal. Moments that weren't. I watched myself move through the house like nothing was wrong. Talking, working, living. Then suddenly, shifting, subtle at first, a change in posture, pause too long, a reaction that didn't match the situation, then worse, aggression, confusion, blank stares, and then calm again, like nothing happened. I skipped through multiple clips, each one worse than the last, because now I wasn't just seeing isolated incidents. I was seeing a pattern. They weren't just triggering reactions. They were shaping behavior, training it, testing different responses, different triggers, different outcomes, and I was the subject. I felt something in my chest tighten harder than before, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't random. This was development, like they were building something. And then I opened the last file. This one was different, not a recording, a document, text. I opened it, and the first line made my entire body go cold. Final phase preparation. I stared at the screen, my grip tightening on the phone. Below it, notes. structured, detailed. Subject response time improved. Trigger compliance stable. Memory gaps consistent. My breathing slowed, not from calm, from focus, because now there was no doubt. They weren't just experimenting. They were finishing something. I kept reading. Final objective ready. Execution window approaching. Execution. That word hit differently, because now it didn't feel theoretical. Felt real, immediate. And then I saw the final line, the one that made everything clear. Subject will perform task without resistance. My hands went completely still, because now I understood. I wasn't just being controlled. I was being prepared for something I wouldn't even remember doing. Something they needed me for. Something that would happen, whether I wanted it or not. My phone buzzed again. Same number. A new message. Now you know. I didn't reply, because this time, I didn't need to ask questions anymore. I already had the answer, and it was worse than anything I expected. I wasn't the target. I was the weapon. I sat there on the floor, the phone still in my hand, staring at that last line like it was burned into the screen. Subject will perform task without resistance. At first, my brain tried to reject it, tried to twist it into something less dangerous, something less final. But there was no other way to read it. They weren't planning something around me. They were planning something through me. And the worst part? They were confident I wouldn't even remember it happening. I forced myself to stand up, even though my legs felt heavier than they should. The room around me suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had moved in just enough to remind me that this place had never been safe. Every camera, every device, every hidden angle, all of it had one purpose: to shape me into something I didn't even recognize. I went back to the files and started scanning faster, this time not looking for patterns, but for specifics, dates, times, anything that could tell me when this final phase was supposed to happen. Because if I knew when, maybe I could stop it. The timestamps were consistent at first. Regular intervals, gradual progression. Then the last few entries changed. Closer together, more frequent, more intense. And then I saw it. One file marked differently from the others. Not a date, not a time, just a label. Day 0. My chest tightened instantly, because there was only one reason to call something that. It was the start. I opened it. This time it wasn't video. It was audio. I hesitated for a second, then pressed play. First there was nothing, just static. Low, barely noticeable. Then a voice. Emily's voice. Soft, controlled, calm in a way that didn't feel natural anymore. "Listen carefully," she said. I froze, because something about the tone of her voice felt wrong. Not emotional, not personal, precise, like she wasn't talking to me as a person. She was giving instructions. "You won't remember this conversation," she continued, slow and deliberate. "You will feel normal. You will act normal." My breathing started to get heavier, because I already knew where this was going. But when you hear the phrase, there was a pause, long enough to make it sink in. "You will follow through." My grip on the phone tightened. "And when it's done, you will forget." The audio cut off. I stood there, completely still, my mind trying to process what I had just heard. Because now it wasn't just theory. It wasn't just observation. It was confirmation. They had programmed me. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. A trigger, a phrase, an action. And then, nothing. No memory. No resistance. Just execution. I ran a hand over my face, trying to ground myself, trying to stay focused. Because panic wouldn't help. Fear wouldn't help. Thinking would. If there was a trigger, then there was a point where everything would shift, which meant I still had time. But not much. I went back to the document and read through it again. Slower this time, paying attention to every detail I had skimmed before. And then I saw it. A location. Not labeled clearly. Not explained. Just referenced. But I recognized it instantly. My office. My chest tightened again. Because now everything started connecting. My job. My routine. My access. All predictable. All controlled. Perfect conditions. I didn't need the rest of the document to tell me what was coming. Whatever they planned, it was going to happen there. And I was the one who was going to do it. I stepped back, my thoughts racing again, but this time sharper, clearer, because now I had something I didn't have before. A direction. I knew where this was heading, but I still didn't know when. And that was the most dangerous part, because if the trigger was a phrase, it could happen anytime, anywhere. My phone buzzed again. Same number. A new message. You're running out of time. I clenched my jaw, because now they weren't just watching. They were waiting. Waiting for me to realize. Waiting for me to panic. Waiting for me to make a move. But this time, I wasn't going to react the way they expected. I opened the message box, typed slowly, carefully. What's the phrase? I stared at the screen. If I knew it, I could stop it. If I didn't, I was already too late. The typing indicator appeared almost instantly this time.
No hesitación. No delay.
And that alone made my chest tighten, because it meant they were ready. The reply came through. You already know it. My stomach dropped, because that meant one thing. I had heard it before, maybe multiple times, maybe without realizing it. And if that was true, then the trigger wasn't just something I was waiting for. It was something already inside my head, something that could be activated at any moment. I looked around the room one last time, at the devices, at the cameras, at the evidence of everything they had done, and I realized something that made everything even worse. Even if I destroyed all of this, it wouldn't matter, because whatever they built, it was already in me, and I had no idea when it would take over. I didn't waste another second inside that house. The moment I realized the location was my office, everything else stopped matching. The cameras, the devices, the files, none of it meant anything if I didn't stop whatever was about to happen. Because if they had programmed me, and if the trigger was already inside my head, then waiting was the worst thing I could do. The drive felt shorter than it should have. Not because of speed, because my mind was moving faster than everything around me. Every possible scenario kept looping in my head. What was I supposed to do there? Who was I supposed to hurt? What was the task? The scariest part wasn't not knowing. It was knowing that at some point, I would know, but I wouldn't be in control when it happened. I parked a block away from the building instead of directly outside. Old instinct again. Distance meant time. Time meant options. The office building stood there like it always did, clean, professional, completely normal. People walked in and out without a second thought. To them, it was just another workday. To me, it felt like walking into something already set in motion. I stepped inside. The lobby lights were bright. The receptionist gave a quick, polite smile, the kind you barely notice. Nothing felt out of place.
No alarms.
No signs.
No warnings.
That made it worse. I took the elevator up, my reflection staring back at me from the mirrored wall. For a second, I didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different, because I didn't know if I was still me. The doors opened. My floor, my space, my routine. Everything exactly where it should be. Desks lined up, computers running, people talking quietly, typing, moving like it was just another normal day. I walked in slowly, scanning faces. Coworkers nodded. One of them said, "Hey, you're back early." I forced a small nod in return, tried to act normal, tried to feel normal, but inside, nothing was normal anymore. I made my way to my desk, sat down, looked at the screen. My hands hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type anything, because I wasn't here to work. I was here to stop something. I just didn't know what yet. Minutes passed, then more. Nothing happened. No message.
No trigger. No sudden shift.
For a moment, I started to think maybe I was wrong. Maybe this wasn't the day. Maybe I still had time. And that's when I heard it. Daniel. My head turned instantly. It was my manager, standing a few feet away. Calm, neutral, normal. "Can you come to the conference room for a minute?" he asked. My chest tightened, because something about that felt off. Not the request itself. That was normal. The timing, the way it landed. I stood up slowly, every instinct telling me to say no, to walk out, to leave. But my body moved anyway, step by step, following him. I didn't remember deciding to move, and that's when it hit me. This was it. Something was happening. I was still aware, still conscious, but I wasn't fully in control anymore. The conference room door opened. I walked in, and the moment I stepped inside, everything changed. Not visually, not physically, internally, like something in my head shifted. My thoughts slowed, my awareness dulled. Not completely, but enough. Enough to make everything feel distant. My manager stepped aside. And that's when I saw him. The same man from the night at the house. The one who walked out of my bedroom like he belonged there. He was standing inside the conference room, waiting. My pulse should have spiked. I should have reacted. I should have done something. But I didn't, because I couldn't. My body stood still, calm, controlled, like I had been here before, like this moment wasn't new. He looked at me, not surprised, not worried, satisfied, and then he spoke. Slow, clear. Calm down, Daniel. Everything inside me went quiet. Not calm, not relaxed, empty. The noise in my head disappeared. The tension vanished. The resistance gone. And in that moment, I understood. That phrase, that was it. That was the trigger. But knowing it didn't matter, because I couldn't fight it. My body moved again, not by choice, not by instinct, by command. I reached into my pocket, pulled something out, and for the first time since I entered the room, I felt something break through, a flicker, a fragment of control, because I saw what I was holding, a small device, the same type I found in the house, and suddenly, everything connected. This wasn't just about making me unstable. This was about making me act. And I was already doing it. My hand tightened around the device. My body turned slightly, facing the room, facing the people outside the glass walls. Targets. That word hit my mind like a shock. Not thoughts, not emotions, instructions. And I couldn't stop them. I tried. I forced everything I had into resisting, pushing back, holding on. But it was like trying to stop a wave with nothing. My finger moved toward the button. And in that exact moment, my phone vibrated. Sharp, sudden, breaking through everything. For just a second, control came back. Just enough. Just long enough to see the notification. A message. From the same number. 3 words. Don't press it. My entire body froze. Because that was new. That wasn't part of the plan. That wasn't control. That was interference. And for the first time since all of this started, someone else was involved. Someone who didn't want this to happen. My hand trembled. My mind fighting itself. 2 forces pulling in opposite directions. Control and resistance. And I was stuck in the middle. 1 second away from doing something I would never remember, or stopping something I didn't fully understand. My finger hovered over the button. Everything inside me was pulling in 2 directions at once. One side was quiet, cold, empty. It didn't feel like a thought. It felt like a command already accepted. Press it. Finish it. Walk away. The other side was louder, messy, human. It was fear, confusion, anger. Everything they had tried to erase. And right in the middle of that chaos was that message. Don't press it. For a split second, I did nothing. And that single second saved everything. Because the moment I hesitated, the control cracked just enough for me to think clearly again. Not fully, not completely, but enough. Enough to question. Enough to fight. I clenched my jaw and forced my hand to stop moving. It felt unnatural, like trying to move a limb that didn't belong to me anymore. Every muscle resisted in a way I had never experienced before. This wasn't just pressure. This was something inside me pushing back. Something they built. Do it? The man in front of me said calmly, his voice steady, confident, like he had already seen this moment play out, like he knew how it ended. I didn't look at him. Couldn't. Because if I did, I had a feeling it would be easier to give in. Instead, I focused on the vibrations still echoing in my hand from my phone. Someone had interrupted this. Someone knew what was happening. That meant I wasn't alone. And that thought gave me just enough strength to push harder. My hand trembled violently now, hovering inches above the button. The device felt heavier than it should, like it was anchored to something deeper than just my grip. Daniel, the man said again, slower this time, calm down. The moment those words hit me, everything inside me dropped again, like falling into something dark and deep. My thoughts blurred. My resistance weakened. No, not again. I forced myself to move backward instead of forward. Just one step. It felt like dragging my body through something thick and invisible, but it worked. Barely. And then my phone vibrated again. Another message. Left pocket. My breath caught, because I hadn't checked that. With everything I had left, I shifted my focus and forced my other hand into my jacket pocket. Slow, heavy, unnatural. My fingers brushed against something small. Cold. Pulled it out. A second device. But this one was different. It had a screen. And on that screen was a single word. Override. My heart slammed against my chest. Because now it made sense. Someone knew this would happen. Someone had planned for this moment. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I pressed it. For a second, nothing happened. Then everything hit at once. A sharp ringing in my ears. A sudden pressure in my head. Like something was being ripped out from inside me. I dropped to one knee, the device slipping from my hand. My vision blurred, then snapped back. And just like that, the silence was gone. The emptiness, the control, all of it disappeared. I was back, fully, completely. I looked up. The man in front of me wasn't calm anymore. For the first time, he looked shaken. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice losing that perfect control. I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. I already knew. Someone had been watching them, the same way they were watching me. Someone knew their system, their triggers, their plan, and they had just broken it. The door behind me opened suddenly. Footsteps rushed in. Not security, not police, someone else. I turned slightly, and my entire body froze. It was her. Not Emily, someone else. A woman I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, calm, focused, but not cold like them. Different. She looked at me first, quickly scanning, like she was confirming something. Then she looked at the man. "It's over," she said. He let out a small laugh, but it wasn't confident anymore. "You think this ends here?" he replied. She didn't respond to that. Instead, she looked back at me. "You weren't supposed to survive this part," she said quietly. My chest tightened. "What is this?" I asked, my voice rough, still catching up to everything happening. She held my gaze for a second, then answered, "You weren't the first." That hit harder than anything else, because it confirmed what I had started to suspect. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't just one plan. This was something bigger, a system, and I had just been one of many. She stepped closer. "We've been tracking them for months," she continued. "You were the only one who started fighting back." I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not confusion, something else. Because now I understood something clearly. They didn't expect me to win. They expected me to finish the job. And the only reason I didn't was because someone else broke their control. I looked down at the device still in my hand, the one I almost pressed. And for the first time, I realized how close I was. Not just to losing everything, but to becoming something I could never come back from. The room felt different now, real again, alive. But the damage, that wasn't gone. Because even though I stopped it, everything they did to me was still inside my head. And I had no idea if it was really over, or if this was just the part where I finally noticed. The woman turned toward the man again as others started entering the room behind her. This time, it was over for him, for them. But for me, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like waking up in the middle of something I still didn't fully understand. And as I stood there, trying to hold on to what little control I had left, one thought stayed in my mind. If I hadn't stopped myself, I wouldn't even remember this moment. I would have walked away like nothing happened, and everyone else would have paid the price. So if you've ever felt like something in your life didn't make sense, like your own actions didn't fully feel like yours, don't ignore it. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't what others do to you, it's what they can make you do without you ever realizing it. And if this story made you think even for a second, stick around because the next one might hit even closer to home.